Welcome to SUSE Cloud Solutions Roadmap session. It's FUT 1434. My name is Ron Noonan. I'm a product manager in the public cloud group at SUSE, and I am joined by
Robert Schweiker, distinguished engineer and technical team lead of the public cloud team here at SUSE.
Great. So what we're going to cover today, here's a quick agenda. We're going to talk about image types and what you can find up in the cloud service providers on demand and bring your own flavors. Then we're going to talk about what the cloud partner ecosystem is here at SUSE, and then a little about what we publish and how to find them and where you can see them, and some tooling that we have around that with a quick demo. And then we're going to cover the quarterly roadmap and cover that for this quarter and out through the rest of the year. And then we're going to talk a little about a couple of focus items, cloud application platform. We'll do a quick demo of that, and then a little about what SUSE Manager has coming this year and focus on that because it's pretty interesting. All right, here we go. So let's talk about image types. There are a couple of types of images, and Robert is really good at describing these. And Robert, you want to just kind of walk through this?
Yeah, sure. So we have pay-as-you-go or on-demand, and we have bring your own subscription. Let's start with bring your own subscription. Basically, you take the entitlement that you have with SUSE already, so you have a direct contact with SUSE, you have a support contract, and you take that and you register a running instance that was started from a bring your own subscription image, and you register it with the SUSE Customer Center, just like you would register a hardware-based server in your data center or a VM. If you're running your own update infrastructure with, SUSE Manager or RMT or SMT, then you can just register that instance with those systems that you're using where you're managing your updates, and you're all set. Your one-to-one relationship with SUSE remains. Your support is fully transferred, so you get fully supported by SUSE. On-demand is a little different in that instances started from on-demand images, they automatically register themselves with an update infrastructure that is operated and run by SUSE in the public cloud team. We have over 200 servers running in the update infrastructure. There are at least 3 update servers per region, and an instance started will reach out to these update servers, register itself, and then you automatically have all modules registered that are part of SUSE Linux Enterprise Server or SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for SAP applications. And that happens automatically. So once you run on demand, you don't really want to touch anything that has anything to do with repository management. You can add your own private repositories with Zipper AR, but generally you don't want to use SUSE Connect on instances that run on demand.
So just kind of recap, maybe really high-level, quick touch points, the real key differences. When you do on-demand, you're really doing the deal with the CSP. It's consumption-based. Your payment goes to them as you use the instances or the environments, the virtual machines. But when you do the bring your own, you're really interacting with SUSE. SUSE is the vendor you're dealing with directly, and that's one of the fundamental differences. And so consumption-based pricing versus like owning the product is what we're talking about here. Fair enough? Sure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the cloud service provider ecosystem that SUSE has. Here's a small list of the cloud partners that we deal with, and there's a very large ecosystem that happens in the environment that we work with across the market and around the world. But the top 3 I just want to point out, these are somewhat unique in that Microsoft Azure, Amazon's AWS, and Google GCP, those are environments where we offer both style of images, where SUSE creates the images, puts them up in their marketplaces, and you can find them. So if you want to do the on-demand, pay-as-you-go, consumption-based model, you'll find images up there. You can choose from them, and you can use them. And then again, they're built by the CSP and build as you use them. The bring your own flavor are also up there. We build those images. We post them up in those marketplaces. We'll talk about how to find them in a little bit. And those are up there, and you can find them as well. There's another one there, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. That's a little different in that we only do the bring your own environment for that platform. And then there's a large number of the broader cloud partners that we work with, like IBM, Alibaba, and other cloud partners that are on-demand or consumption-based only, and you'll find those on their marketplaces, and those providers build their own images. And that's more or less the generic way or the simple way to describe our cloud partner ecosystem.
Yeah, and before we move on, just a quick also remark. You're not constrained to using either or, right? So you can use on-demand and bring your own subscription, as you can see, fit for the workload that you're running. So the choice of whether you're using on-demand or BYOS should really be workload driven. And I'll just give a quick example. So if you have a server that runs 24/7 and has to run 24/7 to cover a base load for something that you're using, BYOS is probably the way you want to go. It enables you to get LTSS, and we'll talk about add-ons, as you can see in this slide, while on-demand getting LTSS is a little more cumbersome. But on-demand is really great if you have bursty workloads. So you can mix and match as you see fit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And if you look at this particular slide, this is a mostly comprehensive but partial listing of images you can find on the cloud service providers. And you see Microsoft Azure on the top. You see SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for SAP, HPC, and then 12.SPX or 12 SPX and 15 SPX. Those are the different versions of the product you can find up there, and then the various service packs along with it. And then the bring your own environment, the list of images. And as Robert just alluded to, the bring your own environment has a slightly longer list. And Robert, you want to just describe a little bit about the add-ons there and how that affects those environments?
Yeah, so when you have add-ons such as long-term service pack support or live patching, generally these are registered against SCC, the SUSE Customer Center, directly. And so when you have a bring your own subscription instance running that is already connected to your own backend servers for updates or to SCC directly, then depending on the subscription that you have, live patching and LTSS, things like that are already automatically enabled for you, and you can add them to the running instance. So this is a big advantage for BYOS. It makes the addition of the add-ons that SUSE offers very easy. For on-demand, if you want to use add-ons, and there's a blog about that, then you will need to have SUSE Manager. There is no other way to get the add-ons in addition to an on-demand instance other than using SUSE Manager. So that is one of the differences that you will experience when you're running either one of the instance types.
Perfect, thanks. There's one other product too that we see on all of the platforms, Azure, AWS, GCP, but it's not listed here. And the reason that is SUSE Cloud Application Platform. It's supported, you can install it, you can run it on these platforms, but it's not an image. It's actually a little different. It's a container application. And as a container application, you can literally just start up a cluster on one of these platforms like AKS, EKS, GKE, create your cluster, and then install Cloud Application Platform directly to it without ever needing an image. Now, we are going to show a demo later and talk about some images we're creating that help you actually do that, do the install, and then start the application. But the application itself doesn't need an image. You can literally just install it yourself. So let's talk about how you find available images, and this varies by CSP. Robert, you want to go through this?
Yeah, so the public cloud team at SUSE, we run what we generally refer to as PINT, which is a service. So PINT stands for Public Cloud Information Tracker. It has a REST API, and it has a command line client. The command line client can be installed is in the public cloud module repository. You can install it via zipper in, or you can pull it from GitHub and can install it on pretty much any system that you want. So if you're running on a Mac or Windows, you can install it. It's a Python application. You can pull it from GitHub and install it in your system, and you can get the information. The data you get from PINT is basically a history of all images we have ever published. The very first image SUSE published was pretty much 10 years ago in AWS. And every image has a history going forward. So from the very first image in each of these frameworks to the current image, you can find, so if you're running an instance already and that distribution is no longer supported and you want to upgrade, you can find whatever the next image was. If you want to just start a new instance, if you want to move forward with the running instance, then you have super migration and super up and super dupe at your disposal to move the running instance forward.
Great. Perfect. Thanks. So each one of these images, as you talk about, there's a history that goes back, and they've been around a long time. Along with that, we actually have a life cycle for these images, and this is a really important point. There's 4 states, and in a second, Robert's going to cover how they actually transition and what causes a state change between these states. But know that there's an active image there. You'll always find an image up there that's active. Once you start it, it becomes an instance in a VM. Images are things you find in the marketplace. When you start it, it's an operating system that's actually running in your virtual machine environment. So there's an active state, and there's always one of those. There's an inactive state that some of the images move to, depending on what's happened. And then there's a deprecated state, which is what happens right before it's going to be removed from the platform and deleted. And then there's the deleted state. When you look at use the tool that Robert talked about, and we'll show it in a minute, you can see what images were out there, when they were out there, and what state they're in, whether they're active all the way down to deleted. And Robert, you want to walk people through kind of the overview of what constitutes a state change and how it moves?
Yeah, so basically we have state changes when a new distribution is released. So in July, we will have /15 SP2, and at that point, /15 SP1 images will go through a state change. Okay, so the on-demand images for SUSE Linux Enterprise Server will move from active to deprecated when that happens in July. The BYOS images will move from active to inactive, and that is because when you run BYOS, as I mentioned earlier, you have the ability to add LTSS, and then the BYOS images will be available in inactive state until the end of the LTSS period. Similar applies to /for-SAP, but because /for-SAP applications has a much longer life cycle, both on-demand and BYOS images move from active to inactive. Again, it is important to remember that, from a SUSE perspective, we recommend that you always start with the latest image. It will always have the latest security fixes, latest bug fixes included. And so these go on a 3-month, the active images are on a 3-month life cycle, as you've seen in the previous slide. When there's a critical security update, which also triggers a state change, in that case, all active and inactive images get refreshed, and every image that gets refreshed, the predecessor moves to deprecated immediately. For bug fixes, we only consider things that affect booting or booting performance. So things if something is fundamentally wrong in the image. But as long as it boots and things work, we generally do not consider bug fixes for an image refresh cycle. When bug fixes go out, again, then this triggers a state change, and it depends on the image. And bug fixes are also only considered for active images. And then it would depend on the image type, be it on-demand or BYOS. So on-demand we're a little more diligent of going after and fixing issues, while BYOS, as long as it boots, you have full control, just like you do in the data center, and workarounds that may be needed are generally posted in bug reports that you have access to see, and of course you have access to support as a BYOS customer.
Yeah, and this whole life cycle and all the details posted on that link on the bottom and one of the blogs that we put out there, and that's kept up to date as the lifecycle components change. So now let's talk about the actual tool you alluded to a little while ago, and then we'll actually go into a demo.
Yeah, so the PINT tool, as I mentioned, it is backed by a server. The server is expected to be up all the time. It has a REST API. The PINT tool itself is a command line tool, also comes with a Python library, so it can easily wrap it in your own tooling that you may be interested in. If you have tooling that, starts instances, you can always access PINT to get the latest image. and then you can integrate that into your tooling, or you can call the REST API. So this is completely up to you. And I'm just going to show a few things. What you'll see in the demo is how to find the images in each of the frameworks. That means Amazon, Azure, and Google. And then you can see the information that the tool prints out. And then after that, you can see how we use that information that is presented by PINT to create an instance. And then to show you that that actually works, we'll also SSH into one of those instances so you can see the whole chain from beginning to end.
Yeah, and then we'll cover a little bit about the graphical user interface, which is kind of a new little utility that we've created recently.
Yeah.
Great. So now we're in the demo and it's done. Well, now let's take a look at the project schedule. This is what's upcoming this year. So just in this quarter right now, we've released some stuff that's pretty interesting that we'll talk about in more detail. The Cloud Application Platform has an image now up in the Azure Marketplace. It's a bring your own variety of the image. It allows you to launch and start the, or install and then launch and start the Cloud Application Platform in an AKS environment, which it sets up the provisions for you. You also see the PINT UI, which is something that we just went through as a utility. And then from Google, you saw that we have a new driver that is a network driver for that platform. This quarter in April through June, we're going to see a new version of SLES 15, version SP2, come out. When that comes out and ships for on-prem use, you will also see public cloud images for both the bring your own flavor and the on-demand pay-as-you-go flavor show up. You'll see SAP Cal images, again, both styles of images show up. And we're going to also be creating an enhancement to the Azure images that are up there today for SLES and SLES for SAP that allow you to invoke the virtual machine encryption that Azure now supports. Coming towards the end of the quarter, you'll see new Cloud Application Platform launching environments for the marketplaces on AWS and the GCP marketplace. And this will mirror what we're about to show you that's up in the Azure marketplace right now. And in addition, you'll see a management update for the SUSE Management Server version 4.1. Those images will always bring your own flavor, and they'll be up there. And then we'll have some stuff with Parallel Cluster on AWS in the upcoming future. Throughout the end of the year, you're going to see some similar things happen with CAS Application Platform. So Q3 through Q4 calendar year, CAS Application Platform, CAS Container as a Service Platform, Container as a Service Platform on AWS, Azure, and GCP. You will see both the pay-as-you-go and you bring your own environment images up there that will do the install and starting of Container as a Service Platform. And then you'll also see SLES EKS worker nodes, x86 and ARM show up, as well as ECS image for ARM. And then towards the end of the year, you're going to see something that actually is pretty interesting that's really useful for people wanting to manage the pay-as-you-go on-demand instances. And that's the SUSE Manager 4.1 release of automated onboarding. And this is going to allow you, and we're going to go through it in a little bit of details in slideware, to actually convert pay-as-you-go instances that are currently managed. As Robert pointed out, they're all set up to be managed by the infrastructure that the CSPs provide that we manage for them. That's all set up and automated, but if you want to take those same instances and manage them with SUSE Manager, we're going to have some automated capabilities to let you convert those and manage them with SUSE Manager. And then in addition to that, we'll have Cloud Application Platform, pay-as-you-go on-demand implementations for marketplaces on Azure and AWS environments. And that's more or less the high level of what we're working on throughout the end of the year. But let's focus in on a couple of things in specific. Let's take a look at...
And before you move on, Ron, just you can see how quickly things sometimes change. So since we created these slides, SLES 15 SP2, as I mentioned earlier, has slipped into July. For reasons that we want to bring SUSE Linux Enterprise Server and OpenSUSE Leap closer together. So there's a project that has been announced to the OpenSUSE community that the community that does not work at SUSE and those that are part of the community that work for SUSE are working together to bring more of the binaries that are part of SUSE Linux Enterprise Server into OpenSUSE Leap. So that pushed the schedule out for SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. Another couple of remarks on this before we move on. So here are some good examples of projects where we work really closely with the service providers. DVM encryption, for example, for Azure is a service that gets pulled in from the metadata infrastructure in Azure, and it runs as an extension. And so we have to work very closely, or we are working very closely with the Azure team that controls the encryption algorithms and stuff, implementation, to bring that to SUSE Linux Enterprise Server.
Great. Well, thanks for the updates. And that's true. I mean, this is the roadmap as it sits for the work we're doing right now. As the cloud service provider infrastructure changes and their release capabilities change, we adopt and adapt and work with them directly to modify the releases of things as they come out with those environments. So that's a constant, and we do keep these things published so that if you want to check back and look for them and see what's current, that's something that's always available. Thanks for those updates. So let's just take a look quickly at SUSE Cloud Application Platform and what that actually is. This is a component, that's an image that's been released that is published now on the Azure Marketplace that installs and launches Cloud Application Platform. You can do this yourself. It's a number of steps to set up and provision AKS and then install Cloud Application Platform to it. You can do that yourself anytime you want. But this particular image, if you start it up, it will actually capture some of the basic information needed to do an install. It will create and provision the cluster according to the information you give it. And then it will actually install Cloud Application Platform bits into that environment and start it up for you. And then provide you the ability to download some of the variables that you used in creating that environment. And then it'll disappear. It's an ephemeral image or application. It starts, it stops, and leaves you with a running Cloud Application Platform. That's what we're going to actually do. We're going to go through that in the demo. Actually, I shouldn't have switched slides. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through that and show you that in the demo and walk through that. Great. Any comments you want to add to this, Robert?
Yeah, and so as Ron already mentioned, so this is important to realize the instance that you're running is ephemeral, so it's only there to set up the cluster and get Cloud Application Platform running. Once it's running, at the end, we encourage you to download a tar file, which has a lot of information, including the Kubernetes configuration file. So once you have that on your system, and then you can use that and you can run kube control on your own system to control the cluster and monitor the cluster that is running in AKS, EKS, or GKE. So currently the image, the launcher image or installation image is only available in AWS, but as you've seen, we're working on getting the same concept image out into AWS and Google. So currently it's in Azure, and you can see AWS and Google on the roadmap, and we expect us to be there by the end of May.
Great, thank you. So now let's take a look at something else, and this is what we were talking about with managing on-demand instances, virtual machines, using SUSE Manager with the CSP environment. Right now, if you want to do it, it's actually somewhat tedious. And, we've got some graphs or some pictures here to describe it. Robert, you want to walk through what the current process is if you do it without the help of SUSE Manager, and then what it takes to change it?
Yeah, so if you're, so this is the update infrastructure, and you can see that the region servers that we have, which are here at the bottom, they hand out information of the update servers that live in a specific region. So when you start an instance today, which is that single machine dot, then the instance will first reach out to the update infrastructure, to the region servers, get information where the update servers are in that region, and then register against those. So this is the basic data flow of the update infrastructure that we operate for on-demand instances. What's nice about this, of course, is if you start 100 servers, they all register and they all have repositories immediately. Now, if you choose to manage these systems with SUSE Manager, as you can see in this graphic, if they are on-demand instances, then you want to sever the connection to the update infrastructure. How that works is documented in a blog that you can find on the community side. However, when you do that, then when you start an instance, it doesn't automatically register with SUSE Manager. So if you start 1,000 instances, you have to go in and enroll every one of those servers one by one into SUSE Manager. And that's, of course, painful. And so we are working, the public cloud team and the SUSE Manager team are working closely together so that you can mass enroll instances in the public cloud into SUSE Manager. And basically, you will be able to just provide the IP addresses, which you can get from the command line tool, and then dump them into SUSE Manager and say enroll, and then you're done. So we're working on making that process really easy and scalable. And so that's a feature that's coming with SUSE Manager later on this year.
Yeah, and it really affects the use of the pay-as-you-go images in this environment. So this is something that, as Robert points out, you can do this without this update feature. You can actually manage all of these environments with SUSE Manager. You can go in and convert everything. But we've been told that while it's not that hard, it's tedious. And removing that tedium and all of the actual hours of work that is associated with that tedium, this feature addresses. And it's something that we've heard from you that is something that that would really help this environment and make it better. And that's what we wanted to point out. This is an exciting feature that's coming that's actually part of SUSE Manager that has a direct impact on the public cloud use cases. And so we look forward to seeing it come out. That's what we wanted to talk about today. And at this point, we're going to leave it open to questions and see what happens. So thank you very much.